The gavel fell with a sound like a gunshot, sharp and final, and the crowd laughed as if a joke had just been told. At the edge of the dusty fairground, where broken lanterns swung and the smell of sweat and cheap tobacco hung heavy, a lonely lumberjack raised his hand and changed a life forever, for $2. No one noticed him at first. Elias Crow stood apart from the men who shouted bids, his shoulders broad from years of cutting timber, his beard dark and untrimmed, his coat patched and worn thin at the elbows. He hadn't come to buy anything. He'd come because the town was loud tonight, and silence had grown too heavy in his cabin up in the pines. When he heard the auctioneer's voice crack as he announced, "The last lot," Elias meant to leave. Then he saw her. She stood on the makeshift platform, hands tied loosely in front of her, a burlap sack pulled over her head. The crowd roared with cruel curiosity. Someone shouted a joke. Someone else laughed too hard. Elias felt something twist in his chest, an old ache he'd learned to ignore since his parents died and the forest became his only companion. The auctioneer claimed she was nameless and worth what she fetched. The first bid was $5. No one raised a hand. The auctioneer laughed nervously. $2, then. Surely she's worth $2. Elias didn't plan it. His arm lifted on its own. The gavel struck. Sold. The laughter died into confused murmurs. $2 was barely the price of a meal, and the men who'd been joking suddenly looked uncomfortable. Elias stepped forward, paid his coins, and untied her wrists with fingers that shook despite his strength. He didn't touch her face. He didn't ask questions. He simply said, quietly, "You're coming with me. You'll be safe." The walk out of town felt longer than the walk in. People stared. Some scoffed. Some whispered. Elias kept his eyes ahead. When they reached his wagon, he hesitated. "You don't have to ride with the sack on," he said gently. "I won't force you." For a long moment, she didn't move. Then her hands reached up, slow and trembling, and pulled the sack away. Her face was pale and thin, framed by dark hair tangled from neglect. Her eyes were the color of rain-soaked earth, wary, sharp, and tired beyond her years. She studied him as if measuring danger. "Why?" she asked. Elias swallowed. "Because no one should be treated like that." They rode in silence toward the mountains. At his cabin, he showed her the small spare room, set a plate of stew on the table, and left her alone. He slept by the door that night, boots on, axe within reach, not to guard himself from her, but to guard her from a world that had already taken too much. In the days that followed, she barely spoke. She ate, bathed, and stared out the window at the endless trees. Elias worked as usual, leaving before dawn and returning at dusk, bringing bread, fruit, small things he thought might help. He didn't ask her to cook or clean. He didn't ask her story. He waited. One evening, as rain drummed on the roof and the fire crackled low, she finally spoke. "My name is Mara." Elias froze. It wasn't the sound of her voice that struck him, it was the name. Mara. The same name carved into the old locket his mother used to wear, the one he'd found in the ashes after the house burned down decades ago. His breath caught. "Mara," he repeated softly. Her eyes searched his face. "Does it matter?" He nodded slowly. "It does to me." That night, he told her about his mother, about the fire, about growing up alone with grief and trees for company. He told her he never married because he didn't believe he deserved more than solitude. Mara listened, her guarded expression softening into something like understanding. When she spoke of herself, her words came haltingly. Sold to pay a debt she never owed. Passed from hand to hand. Stripped of choice. The sack was easier than being seen. Winter came early that year, heavy and unforgiving. One night, Elias fell ill after working too long in the cold. Fever took him, and for the first time, Mara saw him helpless. She stayed by his side, cooling his brow, whispering words she barely remembered from childhood prayers. When he woke days later, weak and ashamed, he found her asleep in the chair beside him, his hand clutched in hers. Something changed after that, not all at once, but steadily. They cooked together. They laughed, quietly at first, then freely. Mara began to hum while sweeping. Elias carved small wooden animals and left them on her windowsill. The cabin filled with warmth neither had known in years. Spring brought rumors from town. Men talked. The sheriff came once, suspicious, asking questions about the auction girl. Elias answered plainly, "She's free here." The sheriff left, unconvinced but unwilling to push. Elias knew trouble might come. He also knew he wouldn't send Mara away. One evening, as the sun dipped gold behind the pines, Mara stood at the door, hands clasped. "I don't want to be a burden," she said. "I don't want to stay because I owe you." Elias met her gaze. "You don't owe me anything." She took a breath, steadying herself. "Then I want to stay because I choose to." The words settled between them like a promise. Months passed. The bond between them deepened into something quiet and strong. Elias never asked for marriage. He believed choice mattered too much to risk pressuring her. It was Mara who spoke first, one crisp morning as frost edged the grass. "I want a life," she said. "Not hiding, not surviving. A real one. With you, if you'll have me." They married in the clearing behind the cabin, with the trees as witnesses. No crowd, no gavel, no sack, just two people standing in truth. When the sheriff heard, he returned, this time with papers and a stiff nod. The town's whispers faded as years proved the union strong. Children came, laughter filled the cabin, and the forest echoed with a new kind of music. Elias never forgot the sound of that gavel, or the price paid. But he learned that worth is not measured by bids or coins. It is spoken in names, in choices freely given, in the courage to see another human being and say, "You matter." And Mara, who once stood silent beneath a sack, became a woman whose voice shaped a home, whose name transformed a lonely lumberjack into a husband, a father, and a man redeemed not by saving someone, but by honoring her freedom. In the end, the strongest message the mountains ever taught them was simple: love begins the moment we choose dignity over cruelty, and compassion over silence.